Welcome to the Peaked podcast, where I talk about gender identity ideology and other bad ideas, women's rights, and free speech from a European point of view. Hi, everybody. I'm here this morning with Suzy. Suzy is from Belgium, and I've been trying desperately to get somebody to talk to me about the situation in Belgium because, in my non-Belgian opinion, the situation is quite interesting and a little bit wild. And I think what's happened in Belgium with the trans issue is quite indicative of Belgian culture. And so I wanted a bona fide Belgian to come and talk to me about it. And I found Suzy. Good morning, Suzy.
Good morning, Róisín.
How are you doing today?
Well, I'm kind of tired, but I'll do my best.
Thank you for talking to me. It's a bit of a weird place, I have to say. I've been here for 20 years, more or less. I had a bit of a flip out recently because there is a story going on in the news at the moment. You're going to bring us up to speed in a minute. Related to trans issues, the subject closest to my heart. It reveals something about Belgian culture, I think, that I didn't like. And yeah, I'd like to take outsiders through that story. I think it's a good demonstration of cultural differences because obviously I report on trans issues throughout Europe. And I'm very familiar with this lay of the land in Ireland. I'm very familiar in the UK as a speaker of English. I'm very familiar with the situation in Belgium, also France, Netherlands, and a few other places. We can say for sure that the imposition of transgender ideology was very top down. The response to it has been very grassroots, but the grassroots response to it has been quite different in every country. I wanted to get your opinion on that. Would you like to start by telling us a little bit about the current legal situation and maybe the vibes, like how people perceive the trans issue in Belgium, so we can give people a bit of a lay of the land? If I find anything questionable about your description, I'm going to jump in and contradict you. As a Belgian, tell me, what's the story here?
So this was a minor issue up till about 20 years ago. I first noticed it around 2010, I guess. But by then we already had a first law, a law concerning transsexuals. It was named like that, a transsexual law. But it's ground zero for all the issues because it permitted Belgians to legally change their sex on their birth certificate and on their ID. Now, there were some conditions to do this, like a medical transition. So it didn't generate many waves because it was only applicable to a very small minority of people.
And that was what year, Suzy?
This was in 2007, this first transsexual law. It was a proposal by Hilde Voutmans, and it was accepted without the public noticing. But this generated all the implications later on.
And so that had some medical requirements.
It had some medical requirements. People who want to legally change their sex, they couldn't be fertile anymore. So it had no implications on their children because they couldn't get any children anymore. And you had also to complete physical transition. Now, these were, I just want to make clear, I don't harbor any hostility or negativity towards transsexual people.
Standard turf disclaimer.
It's true.
It's true. I know you a bit, yeah. I know you don't mean anyone any harm. Don't worry.
No, and I also don't want to forbid adults who pay for the procedure themselves. I don't want to inhibit anyone from taking the procedure, you know, this.
Mm-hmm. But this is a very Belgian attitude. This is extremely laissez-faire. And, you know, I do find it difficult to make arguments against somebody removing or adding on body parts, I guess. But do you agree with the general turf line that we shouldn't teach kids that this is an option or a possibility? Or what's your position on that?
Of course, this is a totally different issue because adults they have bodily autonomy. They are legally responsible for their own actions. And I think I wanted it treated like elective surgery like you go to a plastic surgeon if you want to make changes to your body. I think adults have the freedom to do so. But no procedure, no matter what, it can't change your sex. So the medical requirements in the transsexual law of 2007, it didn't make any sense because people can't change sex no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So they shouldn't be permitted to legally change their sex because this has implication in other laws specific for women and
Very reasonable. Yes.
negative.
Yeah. So that's out of the way. Good. So we agree on that. What about the treatment of people who have had procedures done to their body? What about how they should be treated and access to spaces and things?
Again, this is a separate issue. I think at an interpersonal level, people can choose what they want, but the laws, like in employers' policies, the employers are obliged to provide single-sex spaces, single-sex toilets, single-sex changing rooms. And in my opinion, sex means sex, not gender. So I want to defend third spaces because I think privacy really is an issue also for transsexual and transgender people. But you can't get access to the changing rooms, the private spaces of the opposite sex based on a gender identity. This doesn't make sense.
Do you find that your view on this is more turfy than the people around you? Because I find that, like, speaking to Belgian people about this, first of all, they can't fathom what the problem would be because nobody can fathom in any country, in any culture, nobody can fathom really unless, I mean, some of us gifted few figure it out very quickly why it's a problem to let people lie about their sex. But most people they have to sit down and think for a minute and they have to be brought around to the idea that this is a very, very bad idea. So a lot of people are uninitiated. But in Belgium, I get the impression that the default mode is this openness or libertarianism, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's not really about openness. It's more about like everybody should have the right to do what they want to do. But what you're saying is more restrictive for a typical person in Flanders, at least. Would that sound like a correct presumption?
I think most people don't care. They don't care and they don't understand enough about biology to make them care. It surprised me. A lot of people really think by getting elective surgery on your genitals, you actually change sex.
No.
Yes, they do.
Really? I don't know. These people really exist, or they just being
highly educated women I talk to, they think people can actually change sex by changing their genitals.
And have they? I wonder if they've met any trans-identifying people, because I think actually knowing trans people, quote unquote, it puts an end to that illusion pretty quickly. Right. So what does this mean? And by the way, I just looked her up, Hilde Woutmans. She's still in the EU, in the European Parliament. Yes. She's still there.
Yes, it didn't stop with the law of 2007, of course, because there were some restrictions to change legal sex. It really derailed in 2017 when there was a second law, the transgender law, found these restrictions, this medical procedure, dehumanizing. So they scrapped those restrictions. And in 2017, the transgender law made it possible for anyone to change their legal sex just based on a personal feeling without medical requirements. And this is when it hit the public, I think, or my small subsection of the public, because most people are still unaware.
You knew about it at the time. In 2017, you said you were aware since 2010.
Yes, I was aware since 2010 that there were issues with people saying people can change sex. Sex is a spectrum. I noticed with my students, they had questions. But the legal aspect of it, now I wasn't paying attention in 2017. I had a baby and a toddler. I had other issues. But in 2017, I was very well aware of the change in the law. I followed it and I really could predict the consequences. Anyone who could connect the dots where, like, a man can, based on a feeling, change his legal sex to a woman. In all his records, his birth certificate, his ID, in a way, the Belgian law.
Sorry to interrupt. Were these implications advertised? Were they talked about in the press, or was it just you coming to the conclusion yourself?
I'm coming to the conclusion myself, of course, in the press. it was presented like this is progress and we're all going to be kind to each other and what a major victory for the LGBTQI plus community. It was packaged and presented like this, yes.
And did you start talking to people about it then, or did you keep it to yourself? Like, you obviously recognized from media reports that it was going to be a sensitive issue, I guess.
I started talking to people around me. I started writing about it, not publicly, but...
That's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago, and I've been busy just trying to probe with the people surrounding me, what they were thinking about it. And I experienced a lot of resistance, and that's why it took so long for me to start writing and talking about it publicly.
And even now, can I say you're nervous talking about it publicly?
Very.
Okay. We won't go into it, why you're so nervous, because I think it's the same as everyone else. It's the same reason why every other woman wants to talk about this, but is worried about the social and professional consequences, I guess, and we'll leave it at that. What were people saying to you when you were trying to get the feeling for what other people thought about this law? You said there was quite a bit of resistance. Did you understand where that resistance was coming from? Was it the same always? Because one of my biggest goals in life is to get all these people into a functional MRI machine and figure out what the hell is going on in the brain of someone when you say to them, oh, look, they're letting men into women's hockey now. And as long as they have long hair and skirts, the people who don't find anything wrong with that, I want to know, I want a heat map of that person's brain. Did you come to some conclusions or theories about why people were resistant to questioning this? And what did you conclude?
And most people don't want to think about it. I call it cognitive dissonance, maybe. They actually somewhere know, most people, that humans can't change sex. But to summarize, they just tell me, be kind. Why can't you just be kind?
And why can't you just be kind, Suzy?
Because in my lectures, I use reproduction. Every lecture, I need human reproduction to explain things, why we are here, how does biology work. You can't get around reproduction. And this is what sex is. And all our secondary characteristics, like the visibleness between men and women, they all fall back to an explanation about reproduction. And this is where I first noticed something was wrong. It was in my own professional field. It's strange how societal idea pathogens trace their way back into biology, into science. And that really, really bothered me. I took a stand.
Your mind is too scientific to let this one fly. But what about the people around you who you considered also smart and science and evidence-based, or, you know, people who know about biology? I'm not talking about like anything in any sphere of your life or whatever, but in general, what conclusions did you come to when you knew other science-minded people like I do who were #be kind?
Well, I thought they were just plain wrong. They think I'm not nice. They judge me morally. I judge them factually. I think this is the difference.
But can't we judge?
Feelings, yes.
But can't we also judge them morally in the sense that this leads to bad outcomes also? Or do you not have that sort of feeling? Because, well, you know, like one of my reasons I think for getting into this was because I've known so many perverts, you know, I've known so many bad guys, and I feel like I know a little bit about men's motivations. And the first thing I thought when I hear about this, you know, I'm like, well, that's going to make it easier for predators to prey on women and girls and kids, boys, whoever. And when I hear about this, my thought about being kind isn't to the transvestite, it's to the women he's potentially whose places he's going to steal in sports because he needs to validate his identity or whatever. I'm judging people morally, like, and I suppose that's why you don't feel that way. You don't judge people. I see somebody who goes along with this nonsense and doesn't question. I judge them morally. I'm like, you're being unkind. Do you not feel that? Are you more just still sort of like just literal brains, and that's your big issue with it?
I don't judge them morally. I don't think these are bad people. A lot of bad consequences follow from good intentions. It's as simple as that. They just haven't thought things through.
But then you
want to deal with consequences.
But we tell them. We say, you know what? You know, if like I made a realization recently. I think I tweeted about it, that in a country like Ireland that only has one women's prison, or in a country like Malta that only has one women's prison, if you go to prison, you're going to be in the same prison with the man who raped you, because there's only one women's prison. In Belgium, we can maybe get into that later, there are a few different wings. There's only one, I think, main women's prison, but there's prisons with women's wings. So, I mean, there's a chance that your rapist might go somewhere else, but in like very small countries like Cyprus and everywhere, that's cruel. And then you say, okay, I'm not arguing with you, by the way, I'm just arguing with a hypothetical person in my head. And you're saying, well, they don't know about it, but we tell them. And then you say, I'm going to tell this person about the really bad outcomes, and then they're going to change their mind. And then they don't. Like, what's going on there?
It's preferred ignorance. They don't want to think the consequences through. It's the task of the government. I don't think it's up to individual people to.
Right.
Yes.
So you think if the law was different, people would be less likely to go along with it?
Of course, it's
because the law sanctions it.
Yes. It's more than that. It's like 20 years ago, I would have used preferred pronouns to address a so-called trans woman.
Mm-hmm.
I don't anymore.
Why?
Because it's very hard to make a case defending women's rights when you call a man.
Right.
And I would have kind of evolved on a slippery slope from, would you please, in personal interactions, address me as a woman? Would you please pretend I am a woman? And then it got baked into law. You have to pretend this is a woman. And not only in personal interactions, but everywhere, in sports, in women's prisons, in women's change rooms. The law is telling us this is a woman, and he is no different from all other women. That's kind of the issue.
Yeah. Right. So we had a 2007 law, which had some medical requirements, that was revised in 2017. And then suddenly it was self-ID. Basically, you go into your communal, your gemeentehuis, whatever, in Belgium, and you sign a bit of paper. There used to be, when I came across this topic, you used to have to wait 3 days, and now it's one and done, as far as I know. I don't know if it changes from Flanders to Wallonia. For people who don't know, Belgium is split into 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how deep you want to get into it. The north part is Dutch, and they're called Flemish people. And in the south, they're Walloons, and it's French speaking. And they're basically 2 different countries in one little landmass with a common external border, as far as I can tell. There's a little German part also in the east, and then there's Brussels, which is kind of an island stuck in the middle of Flanders. And yeah, everyone has got their own government, and then every commune, it's split into shitloads of smaller communes, and they all have their own government. So it's very complicated politically. One of the remarks that I hear often is the reason why Belgium is like this, in terms of why it's so open-minded, quote unquote, or libertarian or whatever, is because it's the country of major compromise, because there's so many different warring factions, so to speak, that, you know, it wouldn't work unless there was like extreme readiness to compromise on all sides. But I think that's a nice way to put it. But I also think, like, to come back to something you said earlier, is that people don't care. There is as an Irish person who everyone is deeply invested in everybody else's life. You know, it's like a little island full of villagers, essentially. Nobody is a stranger. I mean, I'm romanticizing it now. I've been away for 20 years, but it really is, we come from that cultural sort of background, even if things are very different now. Belgium is not like that at all. People are like, that's your dance space. This is my dance space. You know, we may interact, but I'm not going to interfere in your shit, and you don't interfere in my shit. I mean, that's sort of how I understand it. I don't know what you think about that, but I also have a comment on Flemish culture that I think about the situation here. I thought that Flemish people wouldn't go along with this because of the sort of very, very rational, sort of science-minded, evidence-based culture that Flanders is. That's my impression of Flanders and Flemish people. Very Germanic, despite this old Catholic background, like Irish people, and in contrast to Dutch people, but very sort of rational, yeah, and reason-based. And, you know, Flemish people are like thinkers, good. I don't know, but they're also maybe very conformist and very libertarian. So it's like this weird combination of things. So rather than saying, oh no, but this is bullshit, and like exactly what you just said, this doesn't make any sense and everything comes down to sex and this is going to have terrible consequences. Instead of reaching that conclusion, I find that Flemish people have gone to this, you do your own thing, I don't care side of it. And that sort of freaked me out because I thought, oh God, even the Flemish are willing to overlook such an enormous, lie, how is this possible? Is the social pressure so strong that people are willing to go along with it? I think this question was very well illustrated or played out in the public recently with the affair of Petra de Sutter. Would you like to... He's a man who has a similar background to you professionally, as in thematically. He's a gynecologist. Would you like to tell us about who Petra de Sutter is? Feel free to use pronouns or not use pronouns, whatever you like. And then we can talk about the recent scandal in the press.
Oh, okay.
If you're too worried to talk about it openly because of potential repercussions, don't worry, I'll tell the story if you want.
Oh, well, maybe you start. Accommodations.
Right. So from my point of view, Petra de Sutter is a man. He lived most of his life. I don't know if he has any kids. He's married to a woman anyway. Does he have kids?
Yes.
Okay. So he's a very typical autogynephilic story. He's definitely not a gay man, but he was obviously, probably spent his 20s, 30s, whatever, cross-dressing, and then decided at some point around 2010-ish, around 2014, did he come out publicly as a public transvestite or whatever we're going to call it.
Much earlier.
Much earlier.
Yes.
What year?
I don't know.
But it was early 2000s or before that?
Oh, I think he was about 40.
Right, but he's 60 now, is he? So it must have been early 2000s. But yeah, he's married to a woman. He's Flemish. His name is Paul. There's a photo of him floating around the internet I've seen when he was still Paul. And he was definitely at least late 30s in that photo, wearing a check shirt. Maybe you've seen the photo. But it's very difficult to get any information about him from the before times. So he's done a good job of covering it up. Paul de Sutter is a very public personality. He's a gynecologist, so he worked in gynecology for a long time. I might say some things now, Suzy, that you find objectionable, and I just want to be clear that these are my opinions and not yours, and these are my words, and don't reflect anything about how you feel about Petra Paul de Sutter.
Well, because I don't agree with everything you say.
Yes, right. Well, you can tell me if you feel like talking about what you don't agree with. So he's a gynecologist. He seems to be very hungry for publicity. Like, he just really loves to be in the public eye. He got to be head of gynecology in his department, a very smart man. Fertility is his thing. He's talked a lot about things like surrogacy and freezing ovocytes, whatever, freezing up the gear for trans people so they can have babies later by surrogate or by IVF or whatever. So this is sort of his domain. But he went off and got a job as a member of the European Parliament. I don't know if my timeline is right here. He did that for a few years. Then he was the vice or the deputy prime minister of Belgium. He was in charge of, I think, the civil service and research and innovation. There was a mini scandal where he handled some post office issues and had post office staff on his staff, and it was a bit of a conflict of interest or whatever. He had some minor scandals. But this is a man who is very much in the public eye. He wears what looks like a bad wig. He just looks like a man in a wig. He's a big, stocky bloke, breast implants, whatever, or estrogen boobies, whatever it is that he has. Like, he's just a typical autogynephilic looking man, as far as I can tell. He did a TED Talk a few years ago that freaked out a lot of people because he was talking about, isn't it going to be great one day we're going to use stem cells or we're going to use whatever to create motherless babies, basically create the sperm and the ova from the cells of two men, for example. So he's into all this stuff. He's into all this sort of, I suppose some people might call it transhumanism, but like reproductive technology, to give it its general term. He's into reproductive technology. He's a member of the Green Party. So he's all about that progressive everything bullshit. Would you want to take over here where we talk about what he did after he left the Belgian government?
He became dean of the University of Ghent.
That's his university where he was head of gynecology.
Yes. And there were some issues. First, in an interview, I think it was around the dean change, I think, There were issues in an interview with a journalist about academic freedom and freedom of opinion about Gaza. And then Petra de Sutter, I will say Petra, by the way, then Petra de Sutter claimed the journalist mispresented what was said and lied about it to the board of the university. And
did he say that we can't call it, our position is that it's a genocide or something like that? Can you tell us a bit about what it was, just to illustrate?
Even when you want to research if it was a genocide, it wouldn't be compatible with academic values.
Sorry, let me rephrase that to be clear, because I think it's actually quite central to the story of this man's trajectory. But he said that it's not a suitable topic to question whether or not there was a genocide, because that's against academic values. Was he saying that's against academic values of Ghent University in particular, or in general, or what was he referring to?
Oh, I don't know the specific, but it was in an interview. And the main issue was you can't question this. You can't even research this. That's a big problem
and people freaked out. So who freaked out about that, and what was the reaction to that?
I think some of the professors at the university resisted to what was said in this interview.
Did they resist it in the sense that, no, it's not genocide, or they said, no, you can't put rules like that on academic research? Like, what was the...
You can't put this kind of restrictions on academic research, because that's the crux of academic freedom and academic research.
Right. And just to be clear on the timeline here, this was very recently. This was last year, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. It was like mid-year-ish, something like that. So it was just when he got the job.
Yes.
Right. And so the system in Ghent University is that in order to have gender parity, there has to be each time a pair who get the job, the rector, the dean, and the vice dean, or the deputy dean, or whatever the wording is. And it has to be a male-female pair in order to have parity. So he took the female role, shall we say.
Yes.
He took the female role in that pair. So we can say he took a woman's job, essentially.
Yes, there are two different issues here, because people responded to this objection but why does sex matter even in a position like that? I kind of agree with this, but it's a totally different issue. Now,
what are you saying is a totally different issue? Like, to mix those two things up?
The discussion about women's quota is a different discussion.
Yes.
I don't think they are very helpful, those women.
Me neither. But you know what makes me laugh so much is that we can have both this performative gender quota rubbish and then put a man in it and say, and then have your cake and eat it, It's sort of like you can talk about your gender, your DEI, and then also just make it completely pointless and useless at the exact same time. So they have this fake gender quota that they're very proud of, but then they put in a man and then said, look at us, we're so progressive. That was when he got the job, and he was very proud, and he did all these speeches, and people outside of Belgium might find this insane, but this man is a very public figure. And he did his acceptance speech, and he appears everywhere. And he even does this really weird Belgian thing where before a government is formed or after an election, I don't remember, but all the women go to a house. Can you explain this thing? Do you know what I'm talking about? You know this thing where all the women go to a house and they spend like a few days together to discuss. Can you tell people that, please?
To the elections. You mean the documentary Hertoginnedal? Yes?
Probably. Maybe.
Yes. Because some prominent women politicians from every party gathered there with journalists. Are you talking about this situation?
They stay together in a house for a few days. And they live together.
Yes.
And they film that.
Sorry?
And what's the purpose of that? It's to get them to work out their differences, or what's the point? Or is it like team building, or what is it?
No, it was to highlight the specific challenges female politician experience, what it is to be a woman politician. And now I have had discussions about this before. Don't mind Petra de Sutter being transgender, and I don't mind other people using preferred pronouns. I just think it's totally wrong, the journalist, to cast Petra de Sutter in this program, because the journalist requires everyone, the public, to brainlessly accept this is a woman. And there is a big difference between being polite, telling a white lie, and requiring your public to accept someone as a woman who isn't.
So I think it says a lot about him also that he would accept this casting, that he would take the place of a woman and go into a house and pretends to have had the experience of a woman and all that stuff. And I mean, it's like the quotas thing. Like, get rid of the entire thing if you're not going to do it right. You know, what's the saying? Piss on me and tell me it's raining, you know? So, yeah, so this is just the kind of guy he is. I've seen so many times he's won Woman of the Year and Personality of the Year. Like, people are very, very accepting of him, and not in a superficial way that once, like, people are showing off how progressive they are. They've just sort of integrated Petra de Sutter as this anomalous kind of woman in Belgian society. And we just don't even really talk about the fact that it's a bloke, unless you're a real trash person like me and some other trashy people who will be like, that's a man in a wig, you know, and then you just sound like an awful person. This is why Suzy is so nervous, I think, talking to you today, because that's the atmosphere. That's the soup that we're in. I'm going to add this personal anecdote. I work as a contractor in various roles. And one time I had to go to BOSA, which is like, I don't even know what it stands for, but it's the Belgian Federal Ministry for XYZ. And I was told that there would be representatives of Petra de Sutter's office would also be in the meeting. So I wore an adult human female badge on my shirt that day. I took a photo of it and sent it to the TERF WhatsApp. Nobody cared, you know, and probably this is also a Belgian thing. Like, if I said to those people, if they saw my badge, they'd just be like they wouldn't out and burn down the building like they would in other countries. They'd just be like, oh, that's what you think, sort of. That seems mean. You're probably not a nice person, but that's like, everyone is free to do what they do, like do what they want. Am I right? Which is super frustrating. And that's why when people look from the outside at this guy and you just go, oh my God, Belgium, what the hell is going on? Who is this man in a wig who's just fucking everywhere? Like, you know. But so, yeah, I'm trying to paint a picture of Belgian society. It do be like that. Am I right?
Yes, nobody wants to be the little boy who points out the emperor wears no clothes.
Like an annoying. It's very frustrating being a TERF in this country because it's so deep culturally and legally and in schools, etc. I've written about this so many times, but it mentions gender identity and gender identities like 150, 160 times in the curriculum guidelines for my kids' school. So I put my elder son in a Catholic school for this reason. And one of the first days, he said his titulaire, his teacher, his main teacher, said something about, can't remember what the context was, but she said, yeah, but they're putting men in women's sports now. And my son came home to me and said, Mom, my titulaire is a TERF. And I was like, oh, thank God, I made the right decision. And then my other friends who put their kids in the woke schools, because the non-Catholic schools, there's much more chance that they'll be woke. They're like, oh my God, I've seen some horrific stuff. Like on the first day, one of my friend's kids was asked pronouns. The teacher did pronouns going around the class, like for the, you know, little 12-year-olds. This is just obscene. And then, yeah, other things like they'll do woke teacher in theatre will come in and do a play that has like, you know, the discussion about like why you're a monster if you don't like missex people and all that stuff. So yeah, the country is fairly captured. So that was the first scandal. The first scandal was something to do with hiring people, conflicts of interest when he was in politics. And then the next one was about saying you can't question whether or not this is a genocide or not. And I'm bringing up these scandals just because I think it helps illustrate what kind of person he is. And then the third one was the big one. So the third one was about his acceptance speech. What did he do, Suzy?
So the speech was partly, I think, written by AI, and the AI generated some hallucinated quotes by famous people.
I actually feel sorry for him. Like, as someone who uses AI to write sometimes to help me think, let's say, I actually kind of hate him much more for pretending to be a woman than for using AI, honestly, but nobody else feels that way. Sorry, go ahead.
No, when I use AI, it's to look something up, to translate something. But
exactly. And verify
the sources, and I never write with AI. I think writing is thinking, and I don't want to outsource my thinking. So maybe my sentences aren't perfect, but they are mine. They are actually mine. Everything I write, written by me. I don't outsource my thinking. And this, especially in an acceptance speech for a dean of a university,
It's so bad.
Not to check sources, I think it's unforgivable.
But do they have an official policy about it? Because there was some about that as well. The fact that he's actually forbidden people from using AI himself, or what was that about?
Well, students are penalized if they would do what the dean did. So,
my God.
Yes.
So there were 3 quotes. It's just funny. The details are kind of funny. I only know one of the people, Albert Einstein, and he said the only one I know is like, dogma is the enemy of progress.
Yeah.
And then the other 2, who were they and what were the quotes? Do you remember?
I don't know by heart. I'm sorry.
But so 2 other people I never heard of. Presumably I wonder what the prompt was. Interesting to think about. But he put all these fake quotes in his speech. Do you know who found it out? Who figured it out first?
Yes, it was investigative journalism because the speech was published on the website. And then some professors alerted the management that these quotes, they didn't make sense. And then they adapted the transcript from the speech.
Oh, even worse.
With a disclaimer. And then there came some excuses, but they weren't excuses. Maybe they were trying to cover it up.
Like people who were talking about this in Belgian Twitter and online and in the news and stuff. For me, it's an exact like copy paste of him pretending to be a woman. He's just a massive faker. That's my opinion. Disclaimer: Suzy doesn't think this. This is me.
No,
I don't. Frederick de Sutter is a massive faker, and the fact that he lied in an acceptance speech will be no surprise to anybody who studies autogynephilic narcissistic male behavior. Go check out my Substack, my newsletter, where I talk about my observation of these men, thousands of these men in their private groups, and what they think and how they view themselves and how they view other people. Everyone else is just a tool for their validation. So this guy, I mean, he's reached a pinnacle of, he's just keeps winning, doing the best and reaching the top of everything. His career is just like so great and everyone loves and accepts him. And then he just does this absolutely bizarre thing and then tries to trick everyone into thinking like, oh no, the lying never ends, the trickery never ends. And then he just disappeared for a week. And then everyone went mental about it online. And then he came back. And then what did he say when he came back, when he showed up again? He told another lie. This lie, what did he say?
Oh, what are you referring to here?
What did he say when he first made his public comment after disappearing for a few days? Because wasn't it like this Inge, I'm going to put her link in the show notes, Inge online, she kept saying, where is Petra? Where is Petra? Because he disappeared, like he was gone for a few days and everyone was waiting for him to come out of the shadows and say something about the scandal. And when he came back out of the shadows, he told a complete other lie. Do you remember what it was?
No, I don't.
He said something like, I was hoping you knew exactly what it was, but he said something like, AI doesn't allow you...
Yes, allow literary quotes.
That was the first part of the conversation. If you would like to hear the rest, you can go to peaked.substack.com to hear more. You do that by taking out a paid subscription, which helps me to continue this work and to quit my day job so I can do more of it. Thank you very much. Peaked.substack.com.